Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. Days like this only come along once in a while. It's our post-election wrap-up with my friend Mike Dunn. Welcome, Mike.
Greg, welcome. It's good to be here.
You're the president and CEO of the Greater Salisbury Committee,
Yes.
which has you in a role of sort of watching everything that goes on in town and connecting people to try to solve problems. So the people who are elected officials are really important in the work that you do.
No question about it. We're a nonprofit business and civic organization, but no question about it that we relate and have to interact with our government partners. And it is our goal and my goal to maintain strong relationships with all our government partners, governors and senators and mayors and county executives and county council folks. So the outcome yesterday is another election, and our job now will be to forge a new relationship with whomever the new mayor turns out to be.
Now, as we sit here, the day after the election, Randy Taylor is the winner based on the votes that have been counted so far. Absentees and provisionals will be counted in a first round on Thursday.
Right.
And then next Friday, the final votes, because there are votes that still can come in the mail. There's a deadline on that. So the election is not over, but in my mind, his 53 vote margin, I see it as insurmountable, so I think Randy Taylor's been elected mayor.
It certainly appears that Randy Taylor, if I'm waking up this morning, I'd rather wake up as Randy Taylor than either Megan Alton or Jermichael Mitchell, simply because it's always nice to wake up with the lead. That said, it is somewhere in the 50s, and there are about 210 absentee ballots. I'm presuming that Randy Taylor is going to be the next mayor. But again, if I'm Megan Alton this morning, I'm kind of hopeful for a different outcome. So we can talk about the election and what patterns we saw with Randy as the presumptive mayoral election winner, but there's 50-some votes between the two of them and 210 votes to count.
The 5 city council seats were also up for election. There was one district that was unchallenged. That was Angela Blake's district, District 5. But the incumbents won all their election, all their contests. With Deshaun Dowdy won the most recent appointee. He was able to beat Wayne King.
Yeah, and they won comfortably. And so one of the things I find interesting in, again, it's only been 12 hours or so since all of this happened, is, as we all know, there has been a high level of anger and discourse, if you will, among 12 to 20 citizens at the Salisbury City Council meetings over the last 6 to 8 months. And yet, based on the results last night, 4 of those council people returned to their seats, and the new council member, Sharon DeShiel, is a very typical kind of council person. Everybody knows Sharon. She taught kindergarten in the Wicomico Public Schools for 38 years, comes from a wonderful family, and so she's the kind of council person that you could see winning easily, which is exactly what she did. So she joins the other 4 incumbents, if you will. So despite the quite active display of loud opposition to a lot of things, at the end of the day, 4 of the 5 4 incumbents were returned to the city council.
Right. So our council president, April Jackson, she won handily over Von Siggers, who used to be on the council in District 1, which is the minority-majority district. There's actually 2. District 2 is also a minority-majority district. That's where Deshaun won. And then in District 3 is where Sharon won. And District 3 is the classic Salisbury district, Pinehurst area around the college, that really purely residential area of Salisbury.
Yeah. I would say it's the former classic district. The city of Salisbury is a majority-minority city. And I think what you saw yesterday, including the strong candidacy for mayor of Jermichael Mitchell, the election of Deshaun Dowdy, a new face, the re-election of April Jackson over a face that had been there before. Von, of course, was on the city council 20 plus years ago. ran for a seat on the Board of Education last year, was unsuccessful. So, the Pinehurst neighborhood, as you call it, yes, it's the traditional neighborhood, but I'd say the face of Salisbury is most definitely changing. And if I look at a winner yesterday, just looking at the macro picture, it's Jermichael Mitchell. Jermichael is around 40 years old. He's either 39.
39.
Yeah, 39 years old. Famously was the point guard on the only state championship that Y-High won under the legendary coach Butch Waller. He's been highly engaged in the community, highly engaged in the vulnerable communities. And, he's a coach. He's the head basketball coach at the Salisbury School. And he entered the fray, and he was the first candidate to declare. And lo and behold, he's running very strong, not likely to, he'd need every single one of the absentee ballots to elect him as mayor, but that's a very strong showing. And I think that portends a little bit about what the electoral future looks like in Salisbury and what the electorate looks like in Salisbury.
Yeah, and I think he got his message out really well.
No
and
question.
He came across as probably the most sincere of all the candidates.
Well, he's out there. I mean, there's no question of the three candidates who's been out there working in the community at that grassroots level the longest. That's Jermichael. Randy has entered into that level with his very successful renovation building. He's in the historic neighborhoods. He's turning formerly kind of dilapidated houses and bringing them back to life. So he's on the ground now. But, Jermichael is, no question, been out there the longest, kind of getting engaged at that grassroots level, and all credit to him. An anecdote, I vote at the Wicomico Presbyterian Church, and a young lady who was just a little bit ahead of me in line, when she checked out and got her sticker, they kind of said, hey, we got a first voter here. So I guess they were doing that all day long. It was really cool. So when I walked out into the hallway a few minutes later, there she was, and I congratulated her. I said, hey, good for you, a first-time voter. She appeared to be 18 to 21, 22 years old. She goes, yeah, I got to vote for Jermichael Mitchell, and man, that was really exciting. I said, good on you. I said, way to be part of the process. So Jermichael, at least on that's just one person in one small snippet, he brought new voters to the table. I'm not sure Megan or Randy brought any new voters to the table. And Jermichael brought a lot of them to the table, and all credit to him.
I don't want to forget District 4. Michelle Gregory, the incumbent, beat Harvey Evans, our friend Harvey. Harvey had a lot of views on YouTube, the interview that I did with him, the election interview.
That's because of you, Greg. You know that.
No,
we know that.
No, but he even got more votes than Wayne King,
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the angry vote.
The angry vote was out there. It's just at the end of the day, number one, it looks like voter turnout is in that 20% range. So
about 15.5%.
15%.
Yeah.
And so, that's really an indictment as I look at it. We are a city that has more than 70% of our residential units in the city of Salisbury are rental, and many of them are in troubled neighborhoods. Those kind of folks who are doing the day-to-day challenges of trying to feed their family and keep a roof on their head and keep things, food on the table, all of that, they're not really going to be able to be invested in municipal elections. And so that's a glaring number to me that we've got to do something about that. And it's not necessarily about convincing that 70% of folks who live in those rental properties to get more engaged. It's really about, we've kind of got to create some new neighborhoods to free up opportunities for people to feel that sense of belonging. And I sense that in probably 3/4 of the city limits of Salisbury, a lot of people are just not engaged in their community, and a 15% turnout, kind of is indicative of that.
Yeah, and when I dig into it now, because of the rental population, it's a transient population.
Yes.
So a high percentage of people have not even been in the city for a
Correct.
year to qualify to vote.
That's right, but it's a bad headline
Yeah.
when the city of Salisbury, one of the leading cities in the state, the capital of the Eastern Shore, a growing population base, a headline that reads, "We had 15% voter turnout." To those not familiar with the demographics of the city of Salisbury, the transient population, they're going to look and say, "Oh my gosh, what apathy." But in fact, there was a stirring up yesterday. There was a good turnout of those who are engaged in the process. We just have too many people who are not engaged in the process because they're not vested, because they are transient members of our community.
But one of the things you look at when you look at the numbers, that in a lot of the issues, Jermichael and Megan were kind of aligned.
Yeah.
Do you think that vote was split, which helped Randy?
I think that's the outcome you have to look at. No question about it. Had there only been two mayoral candidates, and Megan and Jermichael were both Democrats. I realize these are nonpartisan
Yes.
elections, but everybody there is registered as something. The top line for the Republican candidate yesterday was around 1,000 votes. When you take the top line of the two Democrats and add them together, it's about 1,700 or 1,800 votes. So I think this was a classic example of splitting the ticket, that Jermichael was the first one in, Megan came in, they both performed well, but at the end of the day, them splitting their votes probably handed the election to our first Republican mayor in 60 years.
Yeah, like ever, probably.
Correct.
Yeah.
So again, just doing it from a raw analysis perspective, the candidacies of Megan Outen and Jermichael Mitchell both fed off one another, and they came close to splitting that Democrat vote. And again, there sits the Republican, Randy Taylor, who is likely the winner because of that splitting of the Democratic vote.
Okay, so Randy Taylor is our next mayor. What are you expecting from this guy?
Yeah, so Randy and I had a really good conversation about 3 weeks ago. I've known Randy for a long, long time, and so he's a friend. And one of the things I talked to him about, I said, okay, your message says progress with transparency. So as I view it, he obviously is not in favor of the Lot 1, Lot 10, Lot 15 as currently configured.
This is the downtown redevelopment
This is the
plan
downtown redevelopment
with
because
some
of
retail, but
parking.
mostly
That's
housing.
right.
Yeah,
And
upscale housing.
They had a bit of a victory last week at the Board of Zoning Appeals. That's still to be determined.
The opponents.
That's correct. Progress, to me and to the Greater Salisbury Committee, does not mean that we return to keeping all the surface parking lot that currently exists. If you don't like the development plan, then as mayor, I'm going to, and I hope that you can agree, that progress will mean let's see what you think is a better iteration of development in downtown. And he agreed on that. So Randy is a pro downtown development guy. He just he needs to see a balance between, as he calls it, the existing central business district owners and the new development that's coming. So what I'm anticipating, what I'm hoping to hold him to, is the first part. It's progress. The transparency is also true. To his credit, he picked up on a vibe out there that I don't believe it's an accurate vibe, but it's the perception that a lot of these things, these projects, were sprung on people overnight. Because you've been reporting on many of these things for 5 and 6 and 7 years.
You write about them all the time.
But as we know, in today's environment, the way in which we get media is different. And so, I think he's talked about doing things like on the proposed Eastern Shore Drive, new iteration. Let's have some more community input. Let's have some charrettes where people can come around and talk about it. He's probably not wrong that the city of Salisbury probably could have done a better job in announcing, hey, Unity Square, I want to remind everybody it's coming. Hey, the new iteration of Waverly Drive, I want to remind you it's coming. The redevelopment of lots 1, 10, and 15, let's talk about that again. So he's promoting progress with transparency, and I expect that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, with Lot 1 especially, people like me and maybe you who know what the plan is.
Yeah.
We've been sitting around for 6, 7 years going, when are they going to get started on this thing? Like, we
Yeah.
were irritated they weren't getting started. Now they're getting started and everyone's irritated that they're starting.
Yeah, and there's the parking question, and Randy and I have had many conversations on that, and we agree to disagree on what's called parking math. I think parking math is not linear, it's different, and there's nuances to it, and Randy doesn't necessarily see it that way, and he's going to be in charge, potentially, again. But the interesting part of all of this is that the city of Salisbury no longer owns lots 1, 10, and 15. They don't own they don't own those lots
Right.
anymore. And so the mayor, whomever that person is going to have to negotiate with the new owner of Lot 1, Lot 10, Lot 15, and that's the Salisbury Town Center LLC, who owns those parking lots. So I think there's a lot left to be determined in the ultimate outcome of the redevelopment of downtown. And Randy, if this victory is upheld and he does end up with the most votes after the electoral or absentee ballots are counted, he's going to have some conversations about that, and we'll see where it goes.
When people talk about Jake Day being very dynamic, they want to talk about bike lanes and Carroll Street and some things with downtown. But there were a lot of other things that Jake did in terms of restructuring the departments, some of the great hires that he made in the administration. There were other things that he was really involved in. And it gets criticized that not enough was done for the zoo or the park or whatever, but the attention was in a different direction.
The naysayers say that.
Right.
I view it differently. The primary thing that Jake Day did, from where I sit after watching him as mayor for 8 years, he changed how we look at ourselves as the city of Salisbury. From a national folk festival to just, we can do these things. These are ambitious things that he laid out. But what I think it did was really lift us in the eyes of the state. We were successful in getting, right now we have $26 million in grant funding.
Exactly.
For all sorts of projects. That doesn't happen unless the drumbeat of what Salisbury could be and where it could land could happen. And that happened under Jake Day.
Yeah, and those things don't you don't
just
pick them off a tree.
Correct.
You have to compete with other people, and then the state and federal government invest in your community.
And the investment, not only from the state and federal government, but let's look at the investment for the Ross. Let's look at the investment for the Salisbury Town Square. Let's look at the investment for the new hotel property. These are investors from across the country. They're not local banks. Our local banks have lending limits at like that $4 million range. Well, these are $70 million projects. And so investment, we are a tertiary market, which means by definition, we're not a top tier market. That outside investors believe in Salisbury, that's huge. At least from where the Greater Salisbury Committee sits, and I suspect from where the Chamber of Commerce sits and from where SWED sits. But a lot of the vocal opponents to the micro aspects of this look at these outside investors and developers as bad things. But that's who's going to develop and build our neighborhoods and redevelop our downtown. Now it's time to concentrate, if you will, on some of those areas, many of those areas where we have this transient population. Now it's time to make those traditional Salisbury neighborhoods be the best they can be. And maybe that's going to be the focus of either Megan Outen or Randy, or, should Jermichael win every single absentee ballot of Jermichael.
Right. Well, but I think my greater point is Jake was very busy and got a lot done that either doesn't get credited or blamed, and
Yeah.
maybe there's a transparency thing in some of that. I don't know. But when I look at Randy, the interview that I did with him, and even the debate, which by the way, you and the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce and Pace at Salisbury University, thank you so much for your
you.
mayoral debate. I did so much of my reporting from your debate, not even the interviews that we did here with the candidates, but
Right.
the really pointed questions that you put to those people in the debates, an unbelievable service to the community. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
But when I go back and I look at Randy's stuff, I hear him criticizing some stuff and making some vague promises, but I don't really know what his to-do list is going to be.
Well, the fact of the matter is we had 3 rookie candidates for mayor who have never, ever done anything like this. And so I think some vagueness is probably appropriate because they don't know what they don't know collectively. One of my personal favorite sayings in life is, be careful what you ask for, you might just get it. So Randy's a good guy. He's an entrepreneur, he's a banker by trade, but he's never come close to being a guy responsible for 400, 500 employees and department heads and things like that. So, I think we would all be wise to not expect an overnight series of decisions. Let's let Mayor Taylor, Mayor Alton, however this shakes out, give them time to get the seat warm, figure out the lay of the land. And I think if all of us work toward enabling and helping them to kind of learn that lay of the land, and it should set them up to succeed, because no matter who wins, we want the mayor of Salisbury to be successful. And so if that's Mayor Taylor, then let's go help him be successful.
Now, success is dictated by convincing the city council to go along with some of the things that you want to do. And not to get too much in the weeds here, but this is the kind of stuff that we talk about.
Sure.
He'll need 3 votes to get anything passed. So does he have those on this new council?
I think Sharon DeShiel and Randy they're both Republicans. So I think that's a natural alliance. I see them as allies. On at least one philosophical thing, and that being the redevelopment of downtown, April Jackson has now kind of changed her vote on some things. So it looks like April and Randy have a bit of an alliance, at least in that. And then Michelle, Gregory, and April, we know they have an alliance. So, it's all fresh. I'm a believer that just because you get 3 votes on one issue doesn't mean that's your permanent alliance. But certainly, Randy's going to need to get 3 votes on a fair share of things. And part of his job as mayor will be to figure out where those 3 votes lie for the things that he wants to do. And if he gets 3 votes on one thing, great. He might not get them on the next. But developing a working relationship with the council, I think, is going to be paramount.
Salisbury has a strong mayor form of government. A lot of people don't realize that. The mayor has really a lot of power within the government. It's unique on the Eastern Shore, which mostly have the city manager forms of government, with the mayor being more of a figurehead, or maybe breaks a tie vote of a council, which happens in Ocean City with Rick Meehan. The job only pays $50,000.
Right.
Only $50,000. The Salary Commission 3-4 years ago wanted to make it 80 or 85.
Yeah.
Mayor Day said, "I'm going to veto it if you all pass that." So they compromised on 50. Do you see a change in that? If we're going to make this a real strong mayor form of government, do we want to change the salary and the benefits that go to our mayor?
I just happened to speak with Mayor Heath yesterday about this very topic. He brought it up. And he believes they should have defined in the city charter that the mayor is a full-time position. And they didn't. They adjusted the salary. But absolutely, if Randy is smart, if Megan is smart, again, should the outcome change, I think they would be very wise to count on the people who have been there. Andy Kitzrow has been involved in that administration. Fire chief, he's our city administrator. John Tull is the assistant city administrator. They've got the right, of course, to bring in their own people, but because they are new, I think they would be wise to, at least for a while, kind of learn the job and learn the people. The city of Salisbury mayor position, I believe, should be in the charter written as a full-time position, and I think the salary should be adjusted to, compensate appropriately.
Anywhere I work professionally or where I live, I want it to be sort of a standout thing where people are like, wow, some great things are happening there, and I felt like that with Salisbury, when Jake Day was mayor and when Jack Heath was succeeding him. And I'm just worried that we're going to go back to sort of status quo and just like the big focus of the year is what the budget is going to be. I want to see some like real progress.
I do too. That's one of the things I think, again, Jake Day ran unopposed the first time he ran, and then he got 90% of the vote the second time he ran. And if he hadn't gotten his new gig, Jake Day would have run for re-election yesterday and won with at least 70% of the vote. I'm hopeful that there's still progress. I'm hopeful that the spirit that Jake Day embraced to raise how Salisbury viewed itself and how it was viewed around the state and the region, I hope that continues. And that's where we are. Randy does love this city. He said so time and time again. And so now, it passes to him to hopefully move us forward in that positive direction, because that's what we need.
I want to know a little bit about what's going on at Greater Salisbury. You just had your young leaders,
TCL, or Transformational Community Leadership.
Right. That happened again over the summer, which is, you want to talk about that a little bit, or some other things that are going on?
TCL was great. You were our facilitator for in the first couple of times we did it. It's a cohort of about 35 people, next generation leaders, and we introduced them to the things and people that make this community go round. We met on the third Thursday of every month from April through October. We had great leadership panels. We went for walking tours of the detention center, the water treatment plant, Warwick Community College. We're on the tarmac on a bus at Salisbury Airport. So Salisbury University was our presenting sponsor, and it went very, very well. We are knee deep in county water and sewer. We have a water and sewer task force.
It must be painful.
It's a challenge. It's something.
I was thinking in the literal.
Yeah, in the literal sense. It's a significant regional thing that Wicomico County has to figure out. Hats off to County Executive Giordano. She has embraced the task force. We have thought leaders around it, experts in the field around it. Amanda Pollock has been in the Center for Watershed Protection where she works. She's kind of been hired in a contractual way to be the kind of quarterback. Director of Public Works person was interviewed this week, so knock on wood that happens. So, that's busy stuff, and that's heavy stuff. And then we also have a mental and behavioral health task force. We have all the right people at the table. We've got Tidal Health and the Tidal Health Foundation. We've got Salisbury University, Warwick, the Wicomico County Public Schools, the Purdue Foundation, the Henson Foundation, the Long Family Foundation, and we're going to call ourselves Healthy Minds for Sure, SHORE. We've got a series of things coming up in the first quarter of 24 where we're trying to do our best to help the mental and behavioral challenges, but also to erase the stigma behind mental and behavioral health. So busy days at GSC.
Well, Mike Dunn, I look forward to us talking on the phone the rest of the week.
Of course.
How many votes for the absentees, and how has this changed, and what do you think is going to happen as we plod through the latest election here in the city of Salisbury?
It was a pleasure. And again, maybe we'll be back next week to talk about Mayor Outen, depending on how this turns out.
He's Mike Dunn. He's President and CEO of the Greater Salisbury Committee. We're thrilled he had time to be with us here today. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you, Greg.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.